Chapter 99. A spiritual view of the environment and the destruction of negative emotions. By taking a spiritual rather than material look upon all creation, very soon and truly, you will begin to feel a real and uninterrupted link to the vibrations of love, of the Father's love. And while experiencing this link at every moment, you will not want any longer to raise your hand against your sister or brother in spirit, physically, even in your thoughts. You will experience by yourselves that you started breathing this very love, and this breathing changed qualitatively. It became more rhythmical, deeper, and healthier. You started experiencing by yourselves that your previous living had lost its reality and glamour. Even though you might be surrounded by the same colleagues and close people, but your attitude to them shall have been tremendously changed. Unexpectedly to yourselves, you will acknowledge the fact that the traits you have earlier noticed in the character of your relatives, friends, or colleagues cease to irritate you as much as they used to irritate you. After some time, you will notice that the manifestation of these negative traits of their character stopped irritating you at all, and that peaceful tolerance of yours to the manifestation of the negative traits of their character will be noticed by them too. At first, they will be irritated by this calmness. They will get irritated not by the fact that you do not get angry, but rather by the fact that they cannot remain calm within themselves, while you remain calm. They will be irritated by the tranquility emitted by you and the vibrations of peace unknown to them, which absolutely do not correspond to their inner low vibrations. They will begin to feel that you are different, and this approach of theirs will start to cause anxiety for them. They will not be able to listen quietly to your speculations on the brighter things, believing that it is nothing but unreal and overestimated theoretical ravings. And even your calmness, as their bitter remarks will not influence your inner vibration field, and as you preserve your tranquility both within and without, will be absolutely beyond their understanding. Therefore, they will even attempt calling you hypocrites who are able to pretend well. They shall be absolutely unable to comprehend that this peace is real and coming from the Father, from an ever greater and more live associative relationship with the living Father. What has become the reality for you and what does not require any willful efforts on your part anymore. All this seems to them to be the enormous efforts of your own will and the forcing of your character. And they will begin to explain to you that to let out the negative emotions accumulated within is not only worth doing it, but even healthy, so that they would not pile up within and that man would not fall ill. They will even present to you the examples of what and when they have read or heard about teaching ordinary people this way by even the so-called professional psychologists and psychiatrists. For them, the outbursts of anger are completely a normal human reaction meant for one's self-protection, similar to a fuse of an electric circuit to protect the devices connected into the circuit from overheat and breaking down. and your attempts to explain to them that an outburst of one's negative emotions is not the source of health will be beyond understanding for the majority of them. It is only possible to melt these negative emotions in the Father's love that can be discovered within one's own self when a sincere communion with the Father is begun. And this association is ever tighter, engulfing every cell, as an ever deeper tranquility and bliss within the soul begins to be felt. And now more personal willful efforts are required to achieve this tranquility and bliss in an attempt to suppress negative emotions within oneself. These very negative emotions have simply disappeared. The mortal cannot explain in a detailed way when and how it happens. Neither knows he this mechanism, yet he can share his experience that these negative emotions have really vanished, and he has only a pleasant sensation of bliss which remains, and that it gets even stronger and becomes prolonged if a person's will of the mortal is directed to a permanent and sincere communion with the Father, rather than to the struggle with the shortcomings and vices of his character, as is taught by psychologists and teachers. It might seem that it cannot be so that the negative emotions which torment not only the mortal soul, but also destroy his material body, could disappear without making any efforts to eliminate them. It contradicts all books which have been written to date by psychologists, psychiatrists, extrasensors, whose assertions are thus turned upside down. Man cannot believe these things, since there is such an avalanche of information before him, such an enormous multitude of information, and all people, as if by an agreement, are claiming the same, that man's personal efforts are always necessary in directing an individual to have positive thoughts, to a positive manner of thinking, because accumulating and keeping negative emotions within is harmful to every individual. The accumulated negative emotions, if unreleased from within, can lead to very grave disruptions of the central nervous system, and they can manifest themselves by different diseases, such as depression, weakening of the immune system of the body, and due to this, they might even manifest themselves by somatic diseases and the like. Therefore, the so-called authorities of yours, by all means, are pressing upon you, upon your consciousness and subconsciousness, an idea that you may release these emotions out and feel a relief, and by this protect yourselves from a greater negative influence on your body. You even justify a person who commits a crime in such a state that you have named as the state of effect. All this explanation and approach to man's life are erroneous. Your psychologists, psychiatrists, and representatives of all other spheres of science do not explain anything about discovering the Father within one's own self, about directing one's own personal efforts, instead of overcoming one's negative emotions by one's willful efforts, or even by a required release of these emotions out, to completely submitting oneself to the Father, and by this melting all these very negative animal qualities which torment oneself in the ocean of the Father's love that overfloods the whole of the inner self of a mortal without any additional efforts to conquer these negative qualities. You must comprehend that animal ego cannot conquer that which also has animal nature. That which is animal cannot struggle against that which is also of animal nature in order to completely conquer it and survive as such. And since it cannot survive remaining of animal nature, neither can it in any way struggle against itself, struggle in order to annihilate itself. That which is of animal nature can be conquered by that which is superior. Therefore, man's higher ego can win against his lower ego. But man's higher ego is not of animal nature, but rather is divine, for it is one's personality, bestowed by the Father, which has a chance to live forever if he walks on the path of the Father's love and returns home to the Father, who is the source of personality. Therefore, it is only turning to the source that you can destroy the negative and animal qualities of your lower self, replacing them by the features of a different quality, by the features of love, truth, mercy, goodness, beauty, and the desire for and manifestation of service. And this is achieved only by never more becoming even as the Father, indwelling your own selves. You have the saying, you will become even as the one you associate with. Or you also have this saying, tell me what is your friend, and I shall tell you what you are. That is why, if you desire to eliminate any negative traits of your untrue and animal character, instead of vainly fighting against these very traits, for you will get tired of the struggle, you will be exhausted and get frustrated because you are not getting any closer to victory. You, each of you, must always turn to the source of the divine traits present within you through his fragment, and by this very connected life channel, let in his living water, which is of the same quality. This is the only true way for you to win against your negative qualities that destroy you from within, even though you do not desire to admit it, and keep claiming that you do not feel fear or anxiety, that you are calm, and that you are strong and healthy. However, these allegations of yours are lies at the very surface of your consciousness. Your subconsciousness is a hot ball of living nerves, which is blazing and chaotic, full of fear and anxiety, and which is demonstrated by your permanent and chaotic dreams. When you come down in your subconsciousness, your dreams will vanish. Your dreams are nothing more than a reflection in your subconsciousness of your chaotic and troublesome living. And they can disappear so that you might have a clean channel in your subconsciousness for the Spirit of the Father, the thought adjuster, to convey to you the teachings during your sleep when your consciousness is disconnected. Therefore, you must comprehend that your health, the physical health of the body, directly depends upon your sincere and living relationship with the Father, rather than upon the use of the misleading information which is provided to you. However great the amount of information might be, it does not mean at all that it is correct. The information is correct only when it is given to you from the higher sources. Once you begin to interpret this information by yourselves, a very large part of it is distorted. And following these distortions, you also make distorted and wrong decisions while teaching others and while trying to apply them in your own life.